kia ora, my name is Jack O'Donnell and I'm from Wellington, New Zealand, where I co-wrote and then directed the short film Woman in Blue. So the story of the film is about an ex-policewoman who relives her memories from a dementia ward, and she sort of goes back through her life through her memories. And while doing that, she sort of relives some of them. So she goes back in time because she thinks that she herself is going through those experiences in that moment. That's something I noticed a lot with people I worked with dementia, and I really wanted to capture that on screen.
How are we today?
I want to go home.
Hey, you're with us now. We're looking after you.
I want to get out of this place.
You're all right.
So I wrote this film with my partner who ended up producing it. Her name is Ash Flynn. We worked on it together for quite a while. The idea came from my grandmother, who was in the last year of her life in a dementia ward. Watching her go through that experience of being in this dementia ward, completely living in her own world, was what gave us the idea to do Woman in Blue. What I noticed is that she would never consider or acknowledge that there was anything wrong with her. And I think that that's the correct way to work with people who have dementia, is that they are in their own reality. And as a result of them being in their own reality, I figured out a sort of a narrative when it came to writing the script that meant that we're seeing it from her perspective, which is that it's all a little bit confusing and it's all a little bit like we're going from one thing to another thing, and there's sometimes no connect between those two things. But the point of it is that she's going through it in her own terms.
Come on, come have some breakfast.
No, I got to put this thing on.
One thing I learned when we took my grandmother into a dementia ward, when my family and I had to do that, was we were told that the reason why a dementia ward is a better place for people with dementia or more severe dementia to be than, say, a rest home is because they are living in their own sort of time frame. So you don't want to give them lots of drugs and things like that, which they have to do in normal rest homes, to make them sort of see the world in their day to day. It's about their reality. So from the moment they go into that dementia ward, they don't really have to take those drugs or things in it like that anymore. What they need to do is just be themselves, and whatever happens. And often those things that happened, I was walking around this dementia ward and people were coming up to me saying, "Excuse me, have you got a letter for me?" or something like that, because they would think I was the postman from 50 years ago. And I think that's the thing that's the most resonating thing about dementia for me, is that you are not forgetting your memories, which is often the idea around dementia, is that people are just forgetting things or not understanding their present reality. What it is that they're going back through their memories, and they can be at any moment in non-linear time speaking to you. And the biggest experience I had of this was when I was with my grandmother at sort of the end of year gathering, and we're all sitting around with cups of tea, and it's all very lovely. And there's some old music playing from that they would remember from the 1950s, 1940s. And then my grandmother picks me up and starts dancing with me, which has never happened before. And that really moved me. And I realized that I wasn't me in that moment. I was someone she danced with at a dance maybe 50 years ago. And it was so impactful that I thought, this has to be made into a film. This has to be made into a story whereby we see it from that perspective.
The film is an intense yet highly effective portrayal of dissociative and degenerative memory disorders. How did you go about crafting the visual language to show and not tell with the lead character's condition?
So I worked with both my production designers, that's Maz Mason, Debbie Fish, and I worked with my cinematographer, Jess Charlton, and we created a look for the film. We really wanted it to be about those airy blue spots and all sorts of things, and that's where we came up with the idea of, we have some flowers at one point that are blue forget-me-nots. The name is very specific because it's all about memory. And then we completely segue from that in the dance scene when we have her in a red dress, which was a deliberate choice to move away from the blue theme, because the rest of the film was so sort of dark and moody, and we wanted that dance scene to be completely full of life. And we thought, let's move away from that, and we're moving into a space of happiness and passion, and it's got to be this moment of joy amongst these quite dark scenes. And then there's these red flashing lights because of police sirens and blue lights. So we were very inspired by depictions of the real world in that sense, because it's all playing in her memory. So one of the beautiful things about making a film like this, where it's not necessarily real, is that we were able to put little imprints from the real world into the design of it. So she's seen in her head these visions, these imprints from her past life, and we wanted to really show that through color and light. The look, the design was very deliberate, and the fact that we never go outside as well is another reflection on the fact that when you're in a dementia ward, it's kind of closed off. So we wanted it to be inside, and it's always in these spaces that can seem a little distant, a little familiar, and a little not familiar either.
Nobody else in my life.
What inspired you to use music and dance within the narratives, as you said, but how did you go and select the songs you used, and how did you go about really interweaving that throughout the whole piece?
So there's 2 dance sequences in our film, and that came from, as I said, this experience that I had with my grandmother, where I was dancing with her at this end of year gathering, which had never happened to me before, with her, and I realized the way she was moving with me, the way she was dancing, I wasn't myself anymore. I was someone from her past life, and that was really moving. And I thought, if we can go back in time to that moment in their memory and see that dance, but do it in a way that's in linear time for the audience, then suddenly we're at this beautiful dance from maybe the 70s or the 80s, because that might be the time frame in which our character Afi will be experiencing that. And then in the present day, at the end, she does the same dance again because it's from her memory, with her current husband. The main theme of the film is about love and connection. And we found, our composer found a classic New Zealand song from the 80s, because it has got that nostalgic feel, called Nobody Else by Ricky Morris, which was quite a hit in New Zealand in the 80s. So it already had that nostalgic factor. And we really loved the song. We wanted to use it, but of course rights and things are tricky to come by. And through a series of contacts, it did take quite a while, we managed to track him down, and he saw the rough cut of the film and he said, actually, this is great, I'd love to contribute. So we sorted out a bit of a deal, and we managed to get him to get his version of that song in there, which was great. The other song we used was by a Māori singer called Tiki Tane, who's really well known, and because we wanted a dance number that was really about culture and about feeling that in that moment. So that was really great. So with those 2 songs, we really felt we had something that sort of tapped into that nostalgic feel, that upbeat feel, that emotional feel. Those were the things we were trying to tap into with those, and we just felt we were going for it when we got the rights to both those songs to use, and we're really grateful for that.
The choreography of for lack of a better word, action in the film is excellent. How did you achieve such quality with a limited budget, and what's the secret to creating believable action on screen?
The action sequences were something we had in mind from the beginning. The reason she's a police officer in the film was because, in the same way that my grandmother was in a dementia ward, Ash, my partner and writing partner, her grandfather was a police officer. So we wanted to combine the 2 stories, and we also felt that it gave it a degree of ability to do some action scenes as well, which was really great. The trick to doing action scenes, there isn't really one. It's just to have a great team. We were very lucky that we had a great stunt coordinator, and I met him through a few networking events in Wellington, and his name is Wilson, and he was fantastic. What he did is he really worked with the actors. We had quite a lot of stunt rehearsals before shooting, which took several weeks to go through. And then when we came to it on the day, it was like they were just able to do it like clockwork. We were able to get all of our angles. It was really nice to see that coming together. And when I was editing, I then invited Wilson into the cutting room, and he just said, look, the trick to this is just to let it breathe. So I was cutting, I didn't quite have the right idea about how to cut it at first. I was cutting it a bit too fast because I was going, oh gosh, is that punch going to work? Is that kick going to work? And then he said, no, just let those moments breathe, because the actors are sort of telling the story. So you want each moment of fight choreography to really speak for itself and tell its own story. And I learned a big lesson then when we were cutting the film about just letting those shots breathe.
You have quite established talent in your film. How did you go about getting them attached to this project, and how was it directing them?
Acushla-tara, who played the younger version of Afi, She was actually living in London at the time, and then she came back to New Zealand for 2 months. And I've known her since uni days, and she's quite well established as an actress in the theatre scene in Wellington at the time, and becoming more established in the film scene. We actually had the script sitting there, and we always said, "Oh, she'd be our dream person to play that role," but we could never see that happening because she was living in London at the time, and then she was coming back to Wellington. We messaged her and said, "Hey, would you like to do this film?" And we sent her the script, and she said, "That's beautiful, I'd love to." And then we thought, oh gosh, now I've got to do the whole rest of the pre-production in about 2 months. We also got on board at that point Tanya Heke, who played the older version of Afi. And Tanya is a really established and respected actress in the New Zealand film scene. And we thought she would be a brilliant person to play opposite Kush as being the older version of the character. And we were so grateful when they said yes, and they both came on board the project. We got other actors, Isabel McKinnon, who's again from a Wellington actor, Lloyd Scott, who's really respected, is more of an elder, he played the old man. We got Isaac Tirena, who was brilliant as well. He's again a Wellington actor, you know, so we sort of knew all these people through connections, and some people we had to cold reach out to, and others we knew through our experiences working in theatre and film in Wellington. Then we had this last part to fill, which was this older Māori man, the equivalent, the older version of Isaac's character. A network connection said, "Hey, look, I might have someone who may be interested in this. Can I send this to Tim Morrison?" And we said, absolutely, that'd be wonderful. Tim got in touch with us and said, he'd be very happy to come down to Wellington for half a day to film this beautiful scene, which was really kind of him. We managed to catch Tim just before he flew back to LA, I think, to film the Book of Boba Fett for Disney. So that was really amazing, having him, catching him on one of his breaks when he's back at home in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and able to come and do our film, which was really sweet of him. The other actor we were really lucky to get was someone that Wilson, our stunt person, brought on, and that was Alan Henry, who played the criminal. He's well known for doing work on the Planet of the Apes films under the mocap suits, and he does a lot of stunt work, and he was fantastic in that role as well. So we had a really strong cast. I didn't feel like I had to do too much directing of the actors because I felt so strongly in their abilities. What I saw my role as being in that space was to guide them through the scenes. And he really worked really well with Kush and himself on that fight scene. It was wonderful to see that collaboration, and I think that's what I'm really big on in any film I work on, is it's making sure that everyone is collaborating really clearly so that we can get a vision across, and we can also make work that we're proud of. Working with Timur Morrison and Tanya Heke on that final scene, that if you watch the film you'll hopefully see the one I mean. I've never seen a reaction like that on the limited amount of experience I've had on film sets before, because what happened is that they started doing this dance scene, and I've talked quite a bit in this interview about those dance scenes, but half the crew were in tears behind the monitor. It was one of those moments where we had 5-minute takes of them just dancing, and there was a bit of sort of temporary music playing and things like that. And it was so moving that I realized at that moment that this had gone beyond just being something I wanted to make or something like that. It was really the crew putting a lot of their heart and effort into this project that made that moment happen. And those two actors were just absolutely wonderful. And they didn't really need much direction, as I've said before. They just were told. Tim came in, and as he does, and he just sort of said, "Oh well, I see we're going to do a bit of a dance, and yep, all good, bro. We'll carry on." And then they did these takes, and I didn't want to call cut because they just kept going and going, and it was just one of the most profound moments I've had on sets. The other thing I was going to mention is that I can't take all the credit for the script, because there's a dialogue scene. There's quite a heavy dialogue scene in the middle, which is between Afi and Owen when they're the younger characters and are sort of sitting in an office type thing, and they're just having a conversation, and it's over a crossword. I did not write that scene as it is in the final film. What I did is I had written a version of that scene, but I wasn't very happy with it on paper. And then I got the actors in. We workshopped it for quite a few hours. I just got them to improvise around the ideas of the scene. And then I took all of what they said and then started taking their little sound bites from that and put that into the script. And then what we ended up with was a script that was a sort of a collage of their ideas, my ideas, and we sort of made it work with their words as well. And I think the other thing to really note is that being truthful comes from a place of the actors having to be truthful. And because it was their words, it just sounded that much more authentic and genuine. And I think that was a really interesting way to work as well. And I do believe that there is room in the rehearsal room before you shoot a film for that creativity, for the actors to be able to put their own expression into it as well.
Does something need fixing?
Yeah, my brain with this crossword.
Something you don't want to lose. 9 of cross. Perpetrator.
How was the research process in creating the film, and what avenues did you go down in order to encapsulate such a powerful topic?
It was great. It was what I wanted to do when Ash and I first sat down to write the script. Was we wanted to encapsulate a whole lot of ideas. So we just wrote all of those onto whiteboards, as you do. And they were things like we want to show, we'd had all these different experiences of dementia. We'd seen dancing, as I said, we'd seen joy, but we'd also seen the moments of real fear, and we'd seen the moments of loneliness, not understanding what you're going through, and also recreating some more traumatic events from your past life as well. So we had all of these sort of thrown on this board, and we did various bits of research from that. One was about looking into how police work, how people work in dementia wards, and especially the character of the nurse as well. We really studied, how nurses work with dementia patients. And so there was a whole lot of different avenues onto those different characters that we really wanted to layer elements of the real world on, and particularly in the bookends of the film, the scenes that are definitely set in the real world, where you have the opening and closing with the older version of Afi and the nurse. We really wanted to make sure that an authentic voice for that came across. If you listen to the dialogue carefully, you might realize that they're sort of having two separate conversations, but what the nurse is very good at doing is she's very good at getting on the same wavelength as her dementia patients. When the nurse says something like, "Are you going to come and join us for the dance scene a bit later?" and Afi says, "Dancing? I don't dance." What she means by that is, in her present reality, in this exact moment, she doesn't think she can dance because she doesn't remember having done it. As you go through her memory, you realize she has done it before, but of course it's all present for her. So when she is dancing, and when she's not, she's not too aware of the concept. So every single line of dialogue was designed to really match up to the experiences of what someone might go through when they're going through dementia from our own experiences.
What was the biggest challenge whilst filming Woman in Blue, and how did you overcome it?
The shoot went really well, which was great. The editing did take a bit of time to find the structure, the pacing. We had to sort of fine tune some moments in them, and it did take quite a while to really piece it together in terms of making sure that the emotion of that story came across. And we did go through many iterations of the editing process. So that was where the biggest challenge was in making sure that the story was really clear. And because we do go across many different time periods, kind of in a linear way, and as you've already said, we don't mention the fact that that she's a dementia patient. We don't actually need to say that. And that was one of our big rules when we first wrote the project, was if we say from the blanket outset, okay, we've seen a dementia ward and we're all seeing it from that, we remove ourselves from her perspective. So we wanted it to all be about her, because dementia patients don't see themselves as being in a confined ward with their issues. They see themselves as this is their reality. So we really wanted to get to the end of the film without having to ever mention the word dementia or say that we're in specifically a rest home. We wanted to let the surroundings, the story speak for itself on that. We were really lucky with our location, because we managed to get one abandoned rest home in this area called Nainai, which is in the Wellington region. And we were just very lucky that we came along at a time when when it had just been recently abandoned, and the people who were currently looking after it were open to the idea of a film crew coming in for a few days. Very lucky to have that window to come in and film. But it meant that we had full run of this old rest home that felt extremely authentic, and we had corridors beyond corridors and little rooms that we could go into, and a big space as well. So we decided we could make the entire film in that space, so we didn't have to go anywhere else, which was wonderful. I think it was about 20 people that we had to organise over a 3-day shoot. We did almost run out of time to get a couple of essential shots towards the end. We were sort of running around with the whole crew were just picking up lights and trying to move to the next shot so we could just try and get all of our shots in. It was really great. A bit of a mad run around at the end there, but I think that's the case with many shoots.
Okay, let's tell us like that. Thank you. What drew you to become a filmmaker?
So I've been making films since I was a teenager. Sort of self-taught myself how to do that. Went to uni, after uni became a videographer. So I really focused on the form of storytelling through working on other people's projects. And I also was always making my own work and constantly trying to better myself through making short films and working on other people's projects as well, primarily as an editor and then as a videographer as well. So my passion is in telling stories that have heart and meaning, which hopefully you've seen an example of with Woman in Blue. The other film that I'm really proud of to have made is one I co-directed with a deaf director that was about a Māori deaf boy who wanted to learn the haka called Tama. And we took that one to several film festivals around the world pre-COVID times, which was wonderful to have that experience. I guess my mission in life is to sort of tell stories that have meaning through being able to make short films, hoping one day I'll be able to make features as well. But it's all about learning, and I think that short films provide an amazing space for being able to try ideas, for being able to learn things without going into a huge project as well. And that's what this has been so great about this project and that other project. And it does take time as well to find voice as a filmmaker. In my early work, I definitely hadn't found that voice yet. And I think what I am proud of with this one is that I feel like my voice as a filmmaker is coming across a lot stronger. And that's only something that can be gained through experience and through learning how to communicate through images and through characters as well.